Hey people, Shinobi no Kami here. In this fanfic after the Kyuubi attack, Naruto was adopted by Kakashi Hatake, an ex-Anbu captain and a student of Naruto's father Minato. How will this change the little Naruto's life? Will he be spared from the villagers' hatred or will things be the same as in the original timeline? Watch to know. Before we begin, please use the like button and share the video if you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. Now, let's roll the intro. Chapter 26, Parks and Training. Naruto was leading Konohamaru through to the park and they talked on the way there. He got to learn a bit more about Konohamaru on the way there. Apparently he was an only child and liked a lot of things, although the boy hadn't had ramen yet, so he resolved to fix that mistake as soon as possible. Konohamaru also learned a few things, like that Naruto knew his uncle Asuma well from Naruto's father and the Hatake poker games. The two were having some fun talking when they arrived at the park and Naruto started to look for Hinata. He didn't have to look far as he saw Hinata pushing her little sister on a swing set. The usually reserved little sister was actually smiling. Hanabi usually acted much like a typical Hyuga inside the compound, but when Hinata got her outside to play she could just be a little kid again. He also saw that Hinata wasn't alone this time, as Neji was there as well, most likely as the bodyguard for the main house members. Although he looked impassive there with his arms crossed just watching, Naruto could tell that he was enjoying the sight of his cousins playing. "Hey Hinata-chan, Hanabi-chan, Neji." Naruto called out to them all and they looked. Neji nodded to him, as Hanabi gave a small wave while Hinata smiled and gave a timid little wave with a blush. They walked up and Naruto smiled at them. "Hey guys, I'd like you to meet Konohamaru Sarutobi." "Konohamaru, this is Hinata, Hanabi and Neji Hyuga." "Hey, nice to meet you guys." Konohamaru smiled behind his scarf. "Sarutobi," Neji said, thinking about that name. "Are you related to the Hokage?" Konohamaru stiffened a little and his shoulders dropped. He really didn't want them to know about that right off the bat. Now he could already seeing them being nice to him just because he was the Hokage's grandson. He hated that, like how the parents of other kids made their kids try to be friends with him even if they didn't like him just because they could get close to the Sarutobi family. He found that out pretty fast and put a stop to it by usually acting like a jerk so they would leave him alone. Although there were at least two kids that he knew at school that seemed okay, but only time would tell with them. Naruto saw the downcast look on the boy's face and had a feeling what he was feeling. Yeah, he's the grandson of the old man, but he hates being called honorable grandson and all that crap. Hinata came forward and bent down to face the boy and gave him a kind smile. The kid looked up at the girl and he had to admit she looked really friendly and kind of pretty too. "Don't worry, we know what that's like. GG, growing up in the Hyuga clan, Hanabi and myself are the daughters of the leader of our clan, so I know what that is like." Konohamaru smiled at the girl. It wasn't often that he could find someone that seemed to know what it was like. He turned to see that the girl on the swings had jumped off and was walking up to him. She looked kind of like her older sister, only with longer hair. She seemed to be looking at him oddly and it was making him a little nervous until the girl looked up at Naruto with a glint of humor on her pearl-like eyes. "Are you brainwashing little kids now to be like you, Naruto-nisan?" Hanabi smirked a little. "What? Why do you say that?" Naruto demanded. "He looks a bit like you with his scarf covering his face," she pointed out. "Is there anything wrong with that?" Naruto said. Hanabi looked at Konohamaru and tilted her head a bit. After a moment she shook her head. "No, nothing wrong with it." Konohamaru wasn't sure why, but he felt his cheeks heat up a bit from the girl looking at him like that and saying it. He didn't know why, but she seemed to be more confident than her older sister, that was for sure. Hinata giggled at the sight. I'm remembering when Naruto-kun and I met." Naruto thought about it and smiled brightly. "Oh yeah, that was one of the best days ever. I made the first real friend that day." Naruto's eyes dimmed a bit as he looked a bit sad. "Your mother was there that day. I remember you hiding behind her." Hinata had on a sad smile. Although it had been a few years, it still hurt that her mother was no longer living and she looked to see her younger sister. She barely even got to know their mother since she had been so young. Most of the images she knew were from pictures that Hinata kept safe. She saw Neji look away and knew that he too felt the loss. Her mother had always been kind to the Branch family and to her uncle and cousin as well. Konohamaru noticed the sudden drop in the group and he had to guess that it had something to do with their mother. He didn't want to ask since it looked like a painful thing. He would save that for later. Instead he decided to break everyone out of this. He grabbed Hanabi's hand since she was closest and started to quickly move to a jungle gym set in a sphere. Come on, let's go and play. This is a park and parks are where you're supposed to have fun. The boy said as Hanabi was surprised by the boy and went with him so she didn't trip or be dragged. Now that Hinata saw that, she fell into giggles again, smiling. That was exactly like how Naruto got her to play all those years ago. She cast a look to Naruto and saw him smiling behind his mask at the scene, and she guessed that he was remembering the same moment too. Naruto broke out of his thoughts as he remembered something that he meant to ask Neji the next time he saw him. Oh Neji, can you do me a favor? Neji raised an eyebrow since he wasn't sure if this was the normal one of like the time a few years ago while still in the academy. He had ran into Neji and asked him to hold something for him and then ran off. It turned out to be a paint can, and that was when one of the teachers caught up, and as it turns out Naruto had tried to make a piece of artwork in the teacher's lounge. That hadn't been a good day for Neji, although he did get Naruto back for that later, as after yet another prank he was running by Neji, so he just tripped the boy. Naruto had been caught and glared at the Hyuga boy but later grinned at him. Apparently he knew what Neji had done and why, and accepted it. Although ever since then he was wary of whenever Naruto said, "Can you do me a favor?" From that point on, like he was at this point in time. "Oh come on, I just wanted you to ask Lee if he wants a rematch with me sometime." Naruto sighed, seeing the look on the boy's face. Neji nodded his head. "Sure, he has been looking forward to it, but don't you dare use that jutsu you used on him again. Despite that, Guy-sensei would disapprove. You remember what Tenten did, right?" Naruto paled, remembering the angry girl with all the really sharp weapons and had killer aim, literally, on his ass after that. Thankfully she wasn't angry anymore, but he learned that all women, especially kunoichi, were extremely dangerous when angry. "Oh trust me, I got a new move that will lay him out, and I didn't feel right winning that way. It was a cheap shot and I want to beat him fair and square," Naruto told him. "Good, although he's been training extra hard and was trying to train while blindfolded," Neji told him, and seeing the expressions on both Naruto and Hinata's face he sighed. It was Guy-sensei's idea to overcome the sexy jutsu. He figured if Lee could fight without seeing it, then it wouldn't work. Naruto thought about that and smacked his head. "Oh man, I never thought of that. If someone can fight without seeing, it's damn useless. That's pretty smart of them." Hinata and Neji sweat dropped at that statement as they couldn't believe that he actually agreed to that. Meanwhile Konohamaru and Hanabi were on the playground equipment as they watched the older kids. "Hey Hanabi, is your sister okay? She stutters a lot and she seems to blush a lot around Naruto-Nisan." Hanabi nodded her head. She has a huge crush on him, but he doesn't know and she's too afraid to tell him. "Oh man, how long has that been going on?" She sighed. "For years, as long as I can remember. Now that I think about it, she's always been like that around him." "Really, how long have you known Naruto?" "I only just met him today." Hanabi smiled as she couldn't remember a time she hadn't known him. "All my life. He and my sister have been friends since before I was born, and he always comes over and is the only non-Hyuga who can just come and go from out compound. He's like an older brother. A bit goofy and stuff, but he's always been fun." Konohamaru smiled at that. "That's cool. So is it because he's such good friends with your sister that he can just come and go?" Hanabi shook her head. "Well, not all of it. Before I was born, a cloud ninja tried to kidnap my sister and might have gotten away with it, but Naruto-Nisan stumbled onto it and beat the ninja." Konohamaru looked back quickly to the three older kids, looking at Naruto with new respect as he was joking around with the other two. Sure, he was a genin and stuff, but he didn't think he was strong enough to take on a real ninja when he was younger. "Naruto must be really strong then. I've got to catch up then. I won't be left behind. He may make it to Hokage before me, but I will take over after him, and I promise to not take the easy way either." "So are him and your sister dating?" Konohamaru asked, seeing how the two were interacting. "Well, she really likes him and I know she would love to be his girlfriend, but she's too shy to do anything about it, and as for him, well, he's totally clueless about it. Konohamaru looked over watching the two again and he had to admit she seemed like a nice girl. Would you want them to be together? Hanabi nodded at once, not even needing to think about it. Yeah, and if they got married then he really would be my brother. She blushed a bit at that. She never told anyone that and it just kind of slipped out, but it was true. She always thought that Naruto and Hinata would be great together and having him as her brother-in-law would be great. He would be there all the time and she knew it would make her sister totally happy in life too. Well, let's help them out then. Konohamaru smiled broadly at her and she had to smile back. After that they started to play some together as they made plans for getting Hinata and Naruto together, plus Hanabi despite herself was starting to have fun. There were no other kids her own age in the main branch and the kids in the other branch stayed away from her, so she didn't have any kids her own age to play with. So meeting another kid her own age that didn't seem to care about her station in life, about her clan or anything. With him she was just another kid and she was growing to like this as well. She hoped to see more of Konohamaru. Elsewhere, Kakashi was reading his usual book as he was currently reading volume 2 of his beloved series. Walking through the streets of the village he somehow avoided all the people, carts and anything else in his way without looking. It was an odd sight to see at times for a man with only one eye, hence no depth perception, reading and still avoid everything and anything in his path. If it wasn't for the fact he would read out quietly to himself bits and pieces, people wouldn't even think he was reading. He was just getting to a good part where the young lovers had just escaped from a band of enemies and were hiding out in a cave. They were wet from the rain so they had to let their clothing dry. He let out a perverted giggle as he knew where this was heading, but he didn't dare skip ahead. It took the flavor out of things that way. He was just getting to where the girl was shyly blushing when he felt a large chakra signature overhead. He looked up and was surprised to see Jiraiya there up on a rooftop. So back in town, huh? Kakashi said with an eye smile. Well, I was making a report and was just about to leave. He dropped down to face the man. So how is the boy doing? Kakashi was wondering how long it would take for him to get to the point, but something seemed off to him. He seemed a bit more direct than usual. He decided to see where this was going and continued on as usual with the man. Naruto is doing great. He passed with high marks and the only one that seemed to give him a run for his money was Sasuke Uchiha. The two have a type of rivalry which seems to help push the other to new levels. I'm actually surprised at how advanced the boys are. The Toad Sanin nodded his head hearing this. Well, that's good. I know that Minato would be honored that you were teaching his boy. He noticed a bit of a pained look in Kakashi's eye, but it went as quickly as it came. He wasn't sure it was the mention of Minato or a reminder that Kakashi wasn't Naruto's biological father. In any case, he mentally shrugged as he thought of something. You know, I might be back for the Chunin exams, so if the boy is getting pretty far I might teach him a few things, maybe even get him to sign with the Toads. I was actually thinking of giving him the contract with the dogs fairly soon, Kakashi interjected. Jiraiya frowned a bit. I don't bad talk them, they are great summons for trackers, but Naruto will need something a bit more powerful to deal with things that are going to be ahead of him. When the truth gets out about his biological father was, you can bet that a certain village would love to get their hands on his legacy. Plus there is something else, someone is trying to gather the tailed beasts and the people who carry them within. He said softly to him in a dark voice. Kakashi's eyes widened a bit then narrowed. Who are they? Still looking into it, but a few years ago it looked like my old teammate Orochimaru was part of them. That's how I stumbled upon the group while I was tracking him. Lost him for a bit, but it seems he quit the group, but I heard something disturbing about a member in their group. Who? Kakashi asked, keeping his voice low. Itachi Uchiha. That name alone was one that was never uttered, but everyone knew the name. Who could forget the man that killed one of Konoha's clans, even the clan that had helped forge the hidden village and only left one survivor? The fact that Itachi was involved worried Kakashi. He was good, but he wasn't sure he could match up to Itachi. Even though people called Kakashi a genius, Itachi took that to whole new levels. I'll have to plan for that and make sure that Naruto is ready, Kakashi muttered to himself. Hold on, don't forget his team, Kakashi, Jiraiya told him quickly. He has a team for a reason and they will most likely get caught up in this too, so you have to make sure they are all ready. Maybe teach them what you can to survive. Like what, my Chidori or Rasengan? Kakashi asked him. Only if they can handle it, but try to do things small and work from there. Kakashi nodded to himself, already making more and more plans. The groundwork would have to be established first, but after they got the basics down they would be able to train a lot harder too. Plus there was something else that he had been preparing Naruto for, but after what Jiraiya said he would have to modify things a bit. Oh well. It just meant more work, and although he liked to be lazy or appear that way when there was hard work to do, he could do it like none other. "Hey Kakashi!" Came a somewhat angry yell, and both men turned to look to see a serious-looking Anko coming up to them. "Anko, what's up?" Kakashi asked, noticing Jiraiya leering at the special Jonin, and he wasn't sure how he felt about that. Anko was a close friend and he was a bit bothered by that. "Well, I had an interesting experience at the hot springs today," she said, placing a hand on her hip. She failed to notice that Jiraiya paled a bit and started to sweat a little, trying not to be too noticed at the moment. "You see, I just off a nasty little mission, so I thought that having a nice stop at the hot springs would be nice, and it was, until some old pervert and two perverted kids were peeking on the women. I didn't get a good look, but I heard one of the boys was wearing black and orange with a mask. And I was thinking, who do I know that fits that description?" Kakashi sighed and hung his head. "I have no idea what he was doing there, Anko, but I will find out, and trust me, the boy will be punished for it." "Hey there, go easy on the kid, after all it might not have been his fault," Jiraiya spoke up. Anko looked at the man closely, taking a step forward. "Wait a minute, the man they described was said to have long white spiky hair too." Jiraiya stiffened and started to look for a quick exit plan. "Hot springs. There are hot springs here. When did they get put in? I'm usually off for long periods of time, so I guess that they could have been put in while I was away." Anko's eyes narrowed, not believing that for a second. "Unless you've been gone for over 50 years, they have been here for a long time and everyone in the village knows about them." "Oh, yeah," he was starting to feel a little killer intent and looked to Kakashi. "Hey, don't suppose you could get your girlfriend to calm down a bit?" "Girlfriend?" Both of them said at that, and they looked at each other for a moment. "Anko has been a good friend for years," Kakashi said to him. "Yeah," Anko said, fighting off a blush. She really didn't want to seem girly in front of other male ninjas, but for a while now she had been entertaining the thought. Ever since she saw him without that mask, she couldn't help but think about that handsome face behind the mask. "Really, I would have thought she was your type too," the old man teased the two younger ninjas. "I mean, she's got a great figure, right?" Kakashi was about to say something when he realized he wasn't sure what to say. On the one hand, he couldn't deny that she was definitely one of the best-looking kunoichi in the village, and she was pretty fun to hang out with. He had gone out when Naruto was old enough, or he got a sitter with other jonins to drink, and she could hold her own. She was pretty skilled, and with a bit more training she could one day make full jonin as well. He did like her hanging out, and Naruto really liked her as well. But on the other hand, if he admitted that he had looked at her and her body, how would she react to that? Anko noticed his hesitation on commenting and was annoyed by that, but she wasn't sure for what reason, so she gripped open her coat. "What, you don't think this is a hot body? And you better be honest, because I work hard to get looking this good." Kakashi swore in his head this wasn't what he needed, although he couldn't help to take a look. She was very trim, she had an athletic build but kept her feminine form. All in all, she had the perfect kunoichi body. He was about to say something when he saw Jiraiya giggling and making notes, so he turned to glare at him. "Do you mind?" "Not at all, keep it up, you two," he snickered, but then froze as he felt two killing intents hitting him, and he slowly looked up from his notepad to see both ninja glaring at him. Kakashi cracked a knuckle while Anko took out one of her kunai. The older ninja gulped and gave a small innocent smile before bolting for the nearest gate out of the village, and he soon had a couple of angry ninjas on his tail as well. 1 week later. It had been a week, and so far Team 7 was just finished with a couple of D-ranked missions. They were just finishing up clearing up a lawn while Kakashi was reading one of his books. It had been a fairly simple week so far, some missions with a little training to see where everyone was in their skills. So far Sasuke and Naruto were very skilled, although Sakura was very smart. She was more book smart, and he was already trying to think of ways of improving her other skills. She wasn't so bad, at least while she had been friends with Naruto and the others. She had gone over and trained with Ino at times, so she had skills in fighting, but so far no justice of her own, at least yet. He was also thinking of a few surprises for his students. He had been thinking hard on how to teach all three and how to make this a real team. He thought back to his own days as a genin with Naruto's father teaching him with Obito and Rin. He also had been thinking about the whole thing with Anko last week as well. So far they had been pleasant together, but there was something going on, like something going on under it all. He sighed. He hated this. Things were so much simpler, but he couldn't think of that now, at least not yet. He looked up to see everyone finished and snapped his book shut. Alright, looks like we're all done here. We did all the work, all he did was read again, Naruto muttered to the two others who nodded slightly. Well, come on, before I report in for the team, I think it's time for you all to learn a new ninja skill, Kakashi said as he led them into their training area. When they got there, he could see Naruto excited as usually, although he would have to disappoint him this time. Alright, while I'm reporting in, I also have some things to look into. Naruto, I want you to teach them the tree walking exercise while I'm gone. Kakashi said. Naruto groaned, oh come on Pops, I already know this. I mean sure, I don't think they know, but I learned this while in the academy, why can't you teach me something while they're learning this? Naruto, you are in a team and as such this is a team exercise as well as training. Kakashi then I smiled. Besides, they could use your help with this advanced chakra control exercise too, and if you really want, try to do it on water once they got the hang of it. Wait, you can do it on water too? Naruto said, excited. Kakashi nodded, although what he forgot to tell him was that you had to use your chakra differently. Oh well, not trying to get wet was a nice way to motivate him to learn faster. Alright, you can count on me. Naruto said happily. Meanwhile, the other two were wondering just what was going on. Sakura was eager to learn something new while Sasuke was a little irritated that Naruto seemed to know something that he didn't, and that meant that he would have to train even harder to surpass him in whatever it was that they were going to see. As soon as Kakashi left, Naruto led them over to a few trees. Okay, so what's so special that you of all people are supposed to teach us? Sasuke asked with his arms crossed over his chest. Naruto smiled under his mask. It felt so good that he was going to show up Sasuke. The guy always seemed to know everything in school, and it was great to show him something for a change. Basically, we're going to climb the trees but using only our feet. What? You can't do that, can you? Sakura asked him wide-eyed, although Sasuke gave a small grunt that he wasn't sure he believed it either. Sure you can, Sakura-chan, all you got to do is use chakra in your feet to stick on it like this. Naruto make a hand seal and concentrated. His control was still not that great, but it was miles ahead where it originally had been, thanks to his dad making him do this exercise among others all the time. He concentrated and started to walk up the tree. He went all the way up to a very high branch and then jumped onto it. See, nothing to it, he shouted out to them. Sasuke grunted and made the same seal and went to do the exact same thing, only he only made it up one step before falling onto his back, and he looked up annoyed at a laughing Naruto. I guess I forgot to mention that you need a set amount, too much and you won't stick in too much and you can launch yourself right off the tree, Naruto laughed. And I bet you know that firsthand too. Sasuke shouted up at him as Naruto stopped laughing and sweat dropped, scratching the back of his head. It was only a few times, he muttered to himself, although in truth it had been a lot of times before he got the hang of it. So how are you doing, Sakura-chan? Where did she go? Naruto looked at the bottom but he didn't see her anywhere. Right here, Naruto, Sakura's voice said next to him, making the boy jump and nearly fall off the branch. He caught himself and saw Sakura there sitting on the branch, giggling at how he looked clinging to the trunk of the tree. How did you get up here? He asked, shocked that she was up here. I did what you did, it's not very hard, she told him. But it took me days to do this and you do it in one turn. I can't believe you're so good at this, your chakra control had got to be amazing, he said to her. Sakura blushed at his compliment. She knew that the boys were better in a lot of things, so finally finding something that she surpassed them both in felt really good to her. Already her inner self was already doing cheers in her favor as well. Sasuke meanwhile was a little angry, although he wasn't sure if it was against himself or not. He only picked himself up and decided to train even harder. There was no way he would be left behind. He had a long way to go to reach his goal of avenging his family and clan, and he would be the best there was in order to face him. The three trained a lot that day. Naruto had Sakura run up and down the tree, saying it was a good way to gain more chakra in your system, and if Sasuke asked her for any advice, as he was still trying. Although Naruto had to admit the other boy was doing better than he had when he started this. He went to a small pond in the area and tried water walking and ended up getting entirely wet for the entire time, and only got to the point where he was standing on the water, but his feet would keep sinking up to his ankles and any movement caused him to lose focus and fall in again. By the end of the day, Sasuke had got halfway up the tree. Sakura was dead tired and could barely move, and Naruto looked like he spent the day in a rainstorm. It was a very amusing sight when Kakashi returned at the end of the day to tell them training was over for the day, but so far he could already see some improvements in his young team and he could wait until tomorrow when they started with weights on for their physical training. Chapter 27, First C-Class Mission. It had been a busy couple of weeks. Every day Team 7 usually had at least 1 or 2 D-ranked mission and then trained after it. They had mastered tree walking and were learning more taijutsu skills lately as well. They were also getting used to the weights that Kakashi had put on them. He made them wear them the entire day even during the missions until they got used to them. The 3 genin were usually very tired at the end of the day because of it, but Naruto usually was the one to bounce back first thanks to his little guest in his stomach healing him. They all had been working hard and Kakashi was proud of how they were doing. Of course there were the little bumps along the way, such as Naruto and Sasuke kept getting in each other's faces. Sakura usually played peacekeeper but at times also had to rein in Naruto as well. It reminded him a lot of his own team when he was their age. Sasuke reminded him so much of himself at that age. Sakura was a lot like Rin, and Naruto was like Obito, only he wasn't late like he was all the time. It seemed that fate had played some sort of joke on Kakashi, but damn it if he could see the punchline to it. They had just finished catching that cat Tora for the 3rd time. The cat seemed to be okay in Sakura's hands, although Naruto was covered in scratches again. It happened all the time, and some animals didn't like Naruto, most likely because of what was inside of him, most likely made them uneasy. They were currently standing in front of the Hokage waiting for what he had to say. He noticed that Naruto was a bit tense for some reason and he could already sense him about to blow up about something. He thought of how he could prevent it, but then again it was hard to prevent Naruto from doing what he wanted. Now then, that's at least 14 missions you've done, and I do have a few others here that you could do as well, the Hokage said, looking over the team's file. There are a few more D-ranked missions here as well that you could do for the rest of the week. No way. Naruto shouted out, finally losing his patience. We've been doing these chores for 2 weeks and I want to put all the training to the tests. We're ninjas, shouldn't be on actual missions or something. I mean, I'll never get to be Hokage if all we do are these crappy things. Naruto. Sakura shouted out at him, giving him a small glare. She just didn't understand why he couldn't just act respectful to others. He mouthed off to everyone, even the Hokage of all people. She sighed, seeing that he calmed down but still had that determined look in his eyes. Although I hate to agree with the masked shorty, I think he makes a point, Sasuke said. Naruto was torn between thanking him and shouted back at him for the short joke. It wasn't his fault he was the shortest in his class, he just hadn't hit his growth spurt yet. He noticed his dad sigh with his hands in his pocket. Kakashi, what do you think? After all, you did request this team for a certain reasons, if I remember. The Hokage smiled at him. Kakashi winced, knowing what the Hokage was referring to. He had made the claim of the kind of team that he was making, so he now figured that he was now being called upon to prove some results. He was wondering if this was the Hokage's way of testing the team, or it might be pressure from certain members about how far the last of the Uchiha was progressing. On the one hand, he wanted to keep the kids safe until they were trained a bit more, but he couldn't keep them from danger forever. There was also the fact that both the boys were eager for action, and there was something else that he had been thinking about. Most of the so-called accidents had stopped since Naruto became a genin. After all, the death of a shinobi of the village would be looked into by ABNU after all, but still maybe a mission out of the village for a time would do them a world of good. Naruto had never been outside of the village and he wasn't sure about the other two either. What exactly do you have in mind, Hokage-sama? Kakashi asked him. Well, there is a rank C mission, mainly it's border patrol along the northern border, as we've been keeping reports of a bandit raiders. It's a small group from the sounds of it, but last week they attacked a pay convoy of the Fire Lord, and so he would like them taken care of before the next convoy goes out. The Hokage said to them. All right, that sounds like an awesome mission, we're on it. Naruto shouted, enjoy it, his first real mission. Naruto, you don't get to say what missions we take, Sakura said, exasperated with him. Kakashi sighed, knowing that if he didn't accept this, Naruto would be impossible to live with until they get another mission like this. Plus it was fairly simple, so maybe things wouldn't be so bad after all. These types of missions you just went out and patrolled, and maybe even the bandits had moved on. They could go out, maybe see nothing, he could get them some training on the side and come back, and at the worst they would just run into some bandits, and he was fairly sure they could handle a ragtag group like that. Alright, we'll take the mission, Kakashi said with a shrug, which of course Naruto was delighted to hear. It took a few hours but they had to gather up supplies. Naruto kept asking his dad what he thought he should bring as the boy was excited. It was his first real mission and he was leaving the area of the village for the first time in his life. He had heard and read all about other countries and what the fire country was like, so this would be great for him to see it in person. He finally managed to pack his backpack with the necessities that he would need for a week in the field. He took a few extra supplies just in case they were going to spend more time out there as well. Come on dad, I want to go and you're not making us late. Naruto said, literally dragging his father out the door. Calm down kid, and why do you assume we're going to be late? He asked in that innocent voice as he got a glare from Naruto making him sweat drop a bit. Never mind. They made it to the main gate on time for once, which was a surprise to the other team members, although with Naruto making sure his dad was still there with him and hauled him along made sure of that. Naruto smiled as they greeted and left the main gates. He couldn't believe that he was actually on a real mission for once and it was outside of the village. He couldn't wait to see some of the sights and to see how he would do in actual combat. It was going to be awesome and he couldn't wait to get back and tell all his friends about it as well. He was walking with his two teammates with his dad in the back reading his book as they made their way to the border. Hey dad, do you think we can get some training in while we're on this mission? Naruto asked him. Maybe if we got time for it, Kakashi said, thinking about it. Can you teach us some new moves? I mean, the taijutsu stuff so far has been cool and yeah, you keep having us tree climb and stuff, but how about something cool? I mean, I got shadow clones but I don't got anything much else, and Sasuke has all those fire moves, and what about Sakura-chan? Naruto asked him. Kakashi had been thinking on that for a bit, and although he had been giving his students in the basics and getting their stamina, speed, strength and chakra up, he had also been working on their fighting styles. Sasuke of course used his intercepting fist style of his clan, but he had lots of holes in his style because no one could teach him. He guessed the young Uchiha was using old scrolls of his family to learn the style. Kakashi was familiar with the style and was helping him to develop it and give the boy pointers. Naruto, he had trained all his life in several styles to find what worked best for him. So far with the training with him, Guy and Enko gave him, and even Asuma had taught him how to use knives. The boy was developing his own style. It wasn't complete or had a name to it, but it fit his styles as it used speed, agility and had a few powerful hits to them, but its major strength was that it was unpredictable like his son. Sakura however needed the most work. The girl had some power in her hits as Naruto could attest when she really wanted to. But she only had basic style from the academy, although she had picked up a few things over the years from her group of friends, but he really needed to work on her. Her chakra control was nothing short of amazing, but her reserves were way too low in his opinion. Which was why he had her do tree climbing daily to get those reserves up. So what kind of things will you be teaching up Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked the masked man. She was starting to get a little eager with what to learn, plus she had finally gotten used to the damn weights on her ankles and wrists as well. Climbing those trees was something she was sick of doing and she was worried that she would be left behind. She had no jutsus of her own other than academy stuff and she didn't want to be the weak link of the team. Yeah, come on dad, what's up? Naruto asked eagerly. Sasuke gave a small grunt. We should be getting stronger and most of what we've done has been useless, at least to me. Aw shut it, you always say things like that, but you didn't know tree walking, did you? And that's important skill to have, Naruto said with his arms behind his head. Sasuke gave a small grunt that meant that he gave that to him but didn't have to say it out loud as his pride wouldn't let him. All I'm saying is that we need more training. How are we supposed to become strong if we just stick with things like this? There are different ways to be strong, Sasuke, Kakashi told him as the three genin looked back at him. You can be strong in character, will, spirit, heart, or just plain brute force. There are many ways, and in a fight it's not always who has the best jutsus or skills, sometimes it comes down to luck or something basic. Every battle is different and so it's best not to focus on mainly one point. Take the three of you, each of you has strengths and weaknesses but none of you have the same weaknesses. That's why you're put into a team, you help make each other stronger than you are as a whole. Naruto and Sakura both nodded, but Sasuke wasn't that impressed. He needed to kill Itachi himself to avenge his clan. When he found his brother he would need to be able to fight him one-on-one, and already he knew that he had a lot of catching up to do. His brother was already a jonin by this time while he was just still a genin. He needed to get stronger a lot more quickly than he had up to this point, so whatever training he could get he would take. On missions he would do his best with his team, but he was an Avenger and he needed to remember Itachi's words. He needed to hate and use that to motivate himself to new heights. Eventually, when they got far enough, Kakashi decided to take to the trees. It would help build them up, plus with being able to climb up trees with chakra would make it easy enough. Plus it allowed him to see how they did physically as well. Naruto he knew had inhuman stamina, so he wouldn't have to worry too much. Sasuke was above average, of course he was looking at Sakura the most to see how she was doing. With all the tree climbing and running and other things, he was trying to make her into a better ninja physically. If she wasn't, then teaching her any techniques would be pointless since she wouldn't have the stamina to use most. He did however have a few items on him for training, but he would have to see how they did by nightfall to see how they had progressed. So he watched as he put them through their paces. They traveled up north through a few forests. He noticed that Naruto was disappointed in not seeing anything other than trees, making comments such as that they had trees back home. Sakura was trying to strike up conversations with Sasuke, who mainly ignored her. That caused Naruto to argue with him about ignoring a friend. It wasn't lost that he liked the girl too, although since the girl wasn't sure which boy was better, he had seen this happen before. The two would argue and Sakura was trying to be peacemaker between them both. Kakashi sighed as he remembered his own childhood, as Obito and him were just the same and poor Rin was in Sakura's role. When they finally reached the border, he had them start their patrol after a small lunch break. When they had a few hours of daylight left, he decided break for camp. Naruto with his shadow clones set up the tents, while Sakura made a fire pit and Sasuke went for firewood. By the end of everything, he had to admit everyone had done well, so he guessed he could at least try and give in some training. He smiled as he thought of something that could help train them and give him a few hours to enjoy his book. Alright, good job for you three, and as promised I'm giving you three something new to study. He heard a groan from Naruto but ignored that. He pulled out 3 scrolls and tossed one to each of them. Sakura, I think you'll be perfect for Genjutsu, so this scroll contains a few of them that you should be able to do with some practice. But how will I practice it? She asked them. Kakashi smiled at her. Well, that's what you got teammates for, isn't it? The other boys looked slightly nervous. Well, Naruto did, as he was horrible with Genjutsu and was always worried he might never get out of them. Sasuke didn't show it, but he didn't like the idea of being used as a lab rat. Sasuke opened up his scroll to see 2 new fire justice, and her smirked fire was something he was good with, so this would help. Naruto looked at his and found something called air armor and wind slash. He couldn't wait to start practicing them right away as thoughts of him using kick-ass wind moves. He remembered how Hinata said he had wind affinity and it was a good thing his dad gave him this. He frowned remembering that night with the scroll and that one wind technique that he found. Unfortunately he couldn't remember the name or much about it by now. He had so much to do, he mentally cursed himself for that. He remembered a bit, and maybe after he mastered this he could ask his dad if he knew that move and he could learn it. From what he remembered, it was something about having a condensed power of air in your hand. He also remembered because it was wind, it had a tendency to shred up a hand of someone that didn't learn it properly. There is one more thing I would like you three to try, Kakashi said as he pulled out a scroll and unsealed the contents. From it a bunch of small handheld balloons appeared as he tossed one to each of them. What's up with this, Dad? Naruto asked. Easy, it's a little training exercise that my sensei made me pass in order to master a move of his. This led for me to learn my own original move as well as learn it, so I wanted to see how you three handle it. The objective is to pop the balloon. Kakashi then saw Naruto going for a kunai in his equipment pouch on his leg. Not like that, Kakashi said quickly as Naruto froze just about to take out the weapon. Kakashi sighed and sometimes wondered what his son was thinking at times. You have to break it with your chakra like this. Kakashi held up one of the balloons and they watched as within a second it exploded from the inside. Everyone looked at theirs and started to concentrate on using their chakra to get it to pop. Kakashi chuckled as he saw their frustrated looks, so he sat back against a tree and read his book as they worked hard on it. He wasn't sure if it was a good idea to get them to try shape manipulation with chakra, but it would keep them busy for a while, besides it would help them in the future. After about an hour of no one getting it, he told them to stop for the moment and start studying their scrolls. He didn't want them to spend the entire time on just one thing. Meanwhile across the forest hidden behind a genjutsu a lone ninja was watching them. She was a young female of about in her early 20s looking at them through a spyglass. She was covered in clothing of a dark green robe with long sleeves, her long dark hair went down her back and she had on a large straw traveling hat that hid her face. She was looking at the ninja group and was trying to see which village they were from, although given that she was in fire country it was a good bet that they were leaf ninja, but she was just trying to make sure. She watched them before the tall one had the kids go to their tents while he took first watch. She closed down her spy glass as she figured she would wait until the shift change and then make a move, that way she ran a risk of not being seen just in case. Bandit camp. The bandits were currently in their camp for the night. They never stayed in the same area twice, as it was a way they stayed ahead of anyone on their trails. The men were mostly just basic bandits that had been gathered by their leader and his lieutenants who were actually ninjas. Well, they were actually ex-ninjas from the way they didn't have any symbols of where they were from, but they had ninja gear and the skills. It was common to see ninjas that had either ran away from their village going rogue or maybe had even been kicked out. They had no idea what village they were from, although there were rumors and of course the few bets. Good money was on the Mist village as they had a high number of ninjas that went rogue for good reasons. Some said Rock, others Cloud and a few Suna, but no one knew for sure. Even their leader never used his real name, which made them think that he was a missing nin trying to hide from hunter nins looking for his head for whatever bounty was on it. They only knew him as Scar from the scars on his face and the missing eye he had as well. The camp held a few fire pits as the men gathered around them drinking and having a good time with their successes. They were a ragtag group, their clothing slightly tattered from overuse and slightly scruffy from long-term living in the wilds of the forests, but they were strong and in good health. They all carried various weapons and the camp had set up tents all around the area as well as a few carts to hold their supplies and whatever they had stolen up to that point. So far they were looking for a place to have as a base so they could have somewhere to put everything safely. In the main tent we find the leader Scar looking at a map on the dirt ground with his lieutenants. Although they called him Scar, his real name had once been Akira of the Cloud Village. But that was years ago before his shame. It all went wrong on that damn mission to the Leaf Village when he had tried to steal that Hyuga girl. Things had been going so well up to that point when he showed up. It had looked like a boy, but he knew that it wasn't a boy but a demon in a boy's clothing. The red chakra and the evil that came off it, he knew what the thing had been. He still had the injuries from that night, like the scars on his face, and still he ached when it rained in certain areas. That demon boy had been his downfall. When he had been taken back to the village they asked him over and over again who had done this to him, and every time he told them the truth. He wanted to warn his village that the Leaf Ninjas had a new ace up their sleeve, only it wasn't the famed yellow flash but a new weapon to use against them. He told them about the boy and said that they should kill it before it got too old to be used against them. But they didn't listen. No one believed his story and many thought that he had lost his mind. As he healed he knew that his reputation was over, that no one would hire him and his village would see him as an embarrassment. Then of course he heard about their own demon girl, and things started to make sense. The girl was older but she had to be like the boy and that made her a danger to the village. So he gathered up a few ninja that thought the same way and had tried to rid their village of her, but they had failed. The girl had lived and they had to go on the run as missing nins. He never used his real name anymore and his lieutenants had chosen new names for themselves as well. He never did understand how things had gone this way. If they had their own demon girl, then why hadn't they believed him about the boy? Why did they keep the girl? Didn't they know she was a danger to them all? There were many theories. Maybe they hadn't believed that the Leaf Village would go so far to create a weapon like they had with the girl. Maybe they were going to use the boy to test their own weapon one day. Maybe they thought that just because it had been a young boy, not even a genin that he claimed defeated him, that none took his words seriously. In the end he came up with only one answer, and that was that none of it mattered. It was the past and none of that mattered. All that mattered was the future. The flat to his tent opened and one of his trusted lieutenants came in. He was a large man with a shaved head and wore plate mail-like samurai armor who had a huge war hammer on his back. The man went by the name of Bear now, which was just how many saw him. Anything new to report? Scar asked him. Sparrow has found a group of ninja in the area, Bear reported to him. Reports so far is that it's a team from Konoha. Strength: 3 genins and a jonin by the looks of it. Scar nodded his head. The jonin might be trouble, but a few genin wouldn't be very difficult. They could swarm the Jonin and let the bandits handle the kids. Although when he asked who the Jonin was, Bear said that Sparrow didn't get a good look at them as she had used a spy glass to see them and not to be noticed. It was too bad about that, but he figured this would happen sooner or later, so it was best to take out this team and then move on. Maybe go into grass country or maybe rice, although he had heard rumors of that new village in that area, but they couldn't be that much trouble if they were new. Prepare the others, we'll attack as soon as we figure out where they are headed and get an ambush, he ordered, and Bear nodded his head to get the others ready. Scar looked at his map as he started to think about where to go next, because as soon as this team was dealt with they would send another team, only this time would be most likely Chunin and above. They could handle this group, but something like that would give them a lot of trouble and they couldn't move because that Genin team might actually keep track of them, and if they were going to move they couldn't leave a trail or let anyone know where they were headed. So they would have to take them out and then leave before the team was listed as missing. Chapter 28, First Blood. It had been a couple of days and so far nothing much was going on, which to Kakashi was just fine. He kept his genins busy with training and giving them pointers now and then on how to look for signs that people had been in the area. He also figured that he had what he needed from the balloon training, so he stopped the training for them. Sakura ended up being able to make a small hole, but after all that effort left her too weak. He had expected as much from her. At this point she could control her chakra the best, but she didn't have what it took to take the training any farther, at least not without years of extra training to get her chakra up. Sasuke and Naruto had done well with it, only just managed to make holes in them. Of course it took them longer than Sakura, but they could do it a few times before they got tired. It was good since that meant both boys had the talent to take it up further, although he wasn't sure about teaching them the full Rasengan. Naruto he knew should have to learn it, after all his was his legacy, and given that Sasuke could have the Sharingan when it was awakened, and with that he could learn his own unique move. But they still had a long way to go. He remembered how long it took himself to be able to break the balloon into pieces and not just make a small hole. It wasn't easy, but this would help them later on when he started with a few other training techniques. This was the first step for both moves, and he had to admit he was glad at their progress, so after that he had them keep on learning on the scrolls he had. This turned out to be very interesting. Sakura had started to practice her genjutsu on the boys. Apparently years with Naruto had rubbed off on her a bit, and she had a slight side for being a prankster. He wasn't sure what they saw, but apparently the boys were staying away from the girl for the time being. Naruto seemed to be having some trouble with the elemental thing, but then Kakashi was just gave him the scrolls, and although he took to the shadow clone jutsu using elemental moves took longer. Sasuke, although he told to hold off until they either found a good body of water or they got home. He didn't like it of course, but it was better than burning down the entire forested area and letting the bandits knowing where they were anyway. So by now they were moving along the border, and so far so good. They hadn't run into any trouble, and whenever Naruto got twitchy without any excitement he would have Naruto fan out with shadow clones to scout the area for trouble or increased his training. Although that trick seemed to be losing its impact on him, and the novelty of it was wearing it off. Plus Sasuke kept asking about the Sharingan and why he had it and how he could access his own. All in all, Kakashi was getting a bit sick of things. What he hadn't known though was that their movements had been followed by the ninjas in the bandit group they were looking for. The woman Sparrow was a specialist in spying and infiltration. She had been quietly keeping her distance from them and sending out small messages to her leader on the movements. She was waiting for word from Scar on what to do. Hopefully they would soon, because she was getting sick and tired of this. She was waiting in the trees before she felt a familiar presence and looked behind her shoulder. There was Bear there sitting on a branch behind her. "What is the word?" she asked him. "He says that we attack them when they reach the open area. The bandits will take care of the genin while we take care of the jonin," Bear told her. She nodded with a smile. She was glad to get things going. She couldn't wait for a decent fight. Being part of a band of bandits wasn't the life she wanted, but when her home let that creature join their ranks she couldn't stand the place any longer. Although she thought joining another village would be preferable to this, but they needed to prove their worth, and sometimes a little money thrown the right way to grease the wheels could work as well. Which was why they even bothered to do this. They couldn't hire themselves out as ninjas as they were still being hunted anyway. So this was the only option. Sparrow removed her genjutsu and left with Bear to plan the attack on the ninja team. Meanwhile back with Konoha ninjas, Naruto was getting bored. Nothing happened, and so far his first real mission was turning out to be a total waste of time. He hoped for some action, sure, he got to practice some new justice, and he secretly was planning on continuing the training with the balloons that his dad showed him when they got back, but it was just so dull. How was he going to be Hokage if he couldn't test himself out for real? By now they were just walking, taking a break from jumping from tree to tree. Naruto looked to his right to see his dad reading his book as usual, then he looked to his left. Sakura was studying her scroll, most likely working on the genjutsu in it. So far she was the only one that was getting anywhere in her own justice, although he hated being put in them. They just unnerved him for some reason, and Sasuke seemed to particularly didn't seem comfortable by being placed in one for some reason. So they walked on in silence as he didn't want to bother Sakura, and Sasuke was usually the quiet one anyway, and his dad was reading, so he was left on his own just thinking. He was a bit disappointed in this for another reason. He wanted to brag about his big adventure to all his friends. He really wanted to tell Hinata as well. He had been looking forward to telling her all about this as well. He sighed, thinking how Kiba would never let him live this down when he found out about just walking in the foods all this time and nothing to show for it. Stupid Kiba, I just know he'll laugh his ass off at this. At least Shikamaru won't say anything, or Choji and Shino would most likely shrug as well, he thought, although I was hoping to impress Hinata a bit. After all, she's been my closet friend. Kind of wish she was here instead of Sasuke, at least she's nice to hang out with, plus she's the nicest person I know. I just wish why she blushes and faints all the time. Maybe I should ask her family if she's sick or something. Meanwhile, back in Konoha, Hinata sneezed while trying to get into her gentle fist style stance in a training session with Kiba. Hey Hinata, you catching a cold? Kiba asked her as he froze a moment before attacking. No, I don't think so, Hinata told him, getting ready. She wasn't, however, totally focused on her training. For the past few days she had been worried about Naruto. Ever since she heard he was on his first C-class mission, she was worried something bad would happen. She just had a bad feeling about this for some reason and wished she was there with him. He had spent so long protecting her that she wanted to do the same for him. Please be careful, Naruto-kun, she silently prayed to him. Back with Team 7, they were just reaching a clearing that Kakashi figured might be a good place for some training for the team while they were searching. He was, however, also thinking about how off this felt. They should have seen some kind of sign of a bandit camp, but no fire pits, large tracks or smoke was seen, which was odd as bandits usually weren't this careless. Plus something else was suddenly nagging him. It was too quiet in the field they were entering. There were no bird noises and no other animal sounds, and that could only mean one of two things. There was a predator around the area, or they had just entered into a trap. He looked at his team and saw that they were too preoccupied to notice he would have to work on that. Everyone, I want you on your guard, he said quietly to them. Huh, what's up, Pop? Naruto asked. What did I tell you about a ninja and his environment? Kakashi asked him. Naruto looked puzzled and then remembered one of the camping trips that he taught him all about ninjas and certain skills. He looked around the area and didn't see anything out of the ordinary, and then he tried to listen and it all seemed quiet, but then he noticed that it was way too quiet. Even a forest with nothing going on had the usual sounds in the background, and they weren't here. Oh crap, I can't believe I didn't notice this, he thought, and gave his dad a look. Both Hatakis gave a small nod. I wonder how many there will be. Oh well, I'll just shadow clone and take them on. In the forest the bandits were already surrounding the group. The ninja leaders told them to take out the kids, although some of the men felt that fighting children was beneath even them, but then again the ninjas had done a good job of leading them, so any voices against this were quickly silenced by the majority. Now they only had to wait for the signal and they were to rush out and swam them. They were to keep the kids away from the adult. A bird call was heard, but it was the same one that the female ninja used. At one the men rushed out of the brushes and charged the kids. Everyone get into position, Naruto and Sasuke point, Sakura center with support. Kakashi told them as he turned to face the others coming at him. Alright, time for some action finally. Naruto shouted out as he made his favorite seal and started to make shadow clones. The clones charged into the group of bandits as they were surprised to suddenly find a horde of blonde-haired ninjas fighting them. Sasuke didn't want to be outdone, so he decided to charge in as well. He jumped into a group of bandits and with his family style starting to take down bandits. He used his kunai to block weapons and then using his feet and fist sent bandits flying back. Sakura saw them and she didn't want to be left out as she smirked as she started to form hand seals to try out her new genjutsu moves. Distortion. The bandits that ran at the girl suddenly felt the world move under their feet as they were getting dizzy and found it hard to keep their balance. Sakura grinned at the effects as they were similar to being dizzy that was sent into their heads. For a ninja of some skill it wouldn't take much to break it, but these weren't ninja. She ran forward and as they were trying to keep their footing she easily started to defeat them. Meanwhile Kakashi had to dodge a kunai that had been thrown at him and he was surprised to see the ninja weapon. They were only supposed to be bandits and not ninja, but that would explain why the bandits were able to hide their tracks so well. They had professional help. He saw 3 figures drop down to him. One was a man with scars on his face as he wore an older looking ninja gear that had seen lots of use but little repair time. The other was a very large man with an equally large club weapon, and finally what looked like a woman with long hair in robes and a large straw hat on her head. So they have missing ninjas helping them, Kakashi guessed by their lack of headbands and their appearance. This complicates things. The others seem to be focused on the bandits while the ninjas are after me. That's smart. The kids don't stand a chance against 3 trained ninjas even if they are renegades. Take him, Scar said as they all jumped to attack the Jonin. Naruto was having a good time. The bandits weren't expecting this team to be this good and they were making headway and beating them back. That is until he noticed that his dad was fighting against 3 people that didn't look or fight like bandits. Crap guys, look behind us. Sasuke looked and saw the ninjas and swore this wasn't in the mission briefing, but at any rate he needed stronger opponents to test himself, and with a vicious backhand to one of the last bandits in his area he saw that the bandits weren't much a threat anymore. I'm going to help you two, keep it up. Sasuke ran up to one of the ninja and threw several shuriken as him. The man was only lucky enough to had turned in his fighting Kakashi to notice and managed to twist his body enough to dodge them, with only a couple giving him shallow cuts. Brat, Sparrow, take care of this one, Scar said to her. She nodded and ran to intercept the boy. He was fast but she was faster. Sasuke was struggling with the woman as her strikes came in swiftly with knife-like blows. Damn it, I need to be faster, Sasuke thought and grunted from a blow. He tried to use a flame just you on the woman but she was too fast as she just dodged them. Then she stopped and started to make hand seals but he couldn't see them. Her robe had long sleeves and so her hands were hidden from sight. Illusionary warrior's jutsu, she said, and suddenly there were copies of her all over the place. He dodged as a few kunai were thrown at him but he knew that they were illusions and only a few were real, so one that was coming from his sides and behind he ignored as he knew she was in front of him. But he felt the cuts as the kunai scrapped his skin. He was surprised at that. He quickly turned around wondering if she had gotten behind him. How did she? She shouldn't have been able to get behind me that fast, but those came at different angles too. He thought as he dodged even more of them. Then he realized his problem. He had been fighting this as though they were just clones. His spares with Naruto had been with shadow clones who were real bodies. Plus he was in a genjutsu as well. For all he knew, the pain he felt wasn't totally real. A few of the injuries could be real but he couldn't tell the real from the fake ones. I need to be faster or else I'm going to get killed, he thought. He was focusing on his chakra, trying to keep ahead, although what he didn't notice was that chakra was starting to build up behind his eyes. Suddenly the world shifted slightly for him. It was like he could see everything in a new light. It all looked the same but there was almost like a ghost image on the female ninjas. He also found himself being able to dodge faster as well. What he couldn't tell was that on the outside his eyes had changed into Sharingan eyes. His left had 2 totems while his other only had 1, but they were giving him a much needed edge. He also could see through her illusion as well. He could see the fakes and he ran towards the real ninja. She was surprised when he suddenly was able to see through her illusion. She didn't understand how that was possible, but she was caught off guard by some genin that had seen through it. Then she saw his eyes and she understood. She had heard of those eyes and what it meant. She dropped her illusions and tried to fight him again, but it wasn't the same this time around. He was blocking her attacks this time, and as they fought she realized something else. He was starting to copy her movements exactly and use her own moves against her. You little brat, I'll kill you, she said and tried to use a kunai to stab him. Not today. He gripped her wrist and threw her over his head. He heard her land and grunt and turned to quickly prepare for her counter-attack. But she was just laying there motionless, and for a moment he thought that she was faking, but he didn't see any movements, not even slight breathing. He slowly moved towards her and turned her onto her back and was surprised to see that she had landed badly and onto her kunai. It was deep in her chest and her eyes were lifeless. It was just bad luck she had landed like that, but it was still strange. He had thought about killing his brother for years, but this was his first kill. Yes, she had tried to kill him, but it felt strange. He wasn't sure how to feel about this as he looked down at her. Meanwhile, Sakura was finishing up her own battles. Her new genjutsu was proving to be very handy thing for her, but she lost her focus on her surroundings and missed one of the bandits getting back up. He had only been stunned and saw the pink-haired girl. He got up and threw a punch at the back of her head. She hadn't seen it coming and her head exploded in pain as she staggered forward. Then she felt a hit to her kidneys and felt herself being thrown to the ground. There were stars in her vision and suddenly she felt a hand on her neck squeezing her throat. "You little pink-haired bitch, I'm going to kill you for that," the man said as his hands gripped her neck. Sakura was starting to panic from the lack of air and the pain in her neck. She knew that if she didn't do anything she was going to die. One of her hands went for her weapons pouch on her thigh and grabbed the first thing she could. She grabbed a kunai and stabbed the man in the side. He cried out in pain, but his hands stayed where they were. She just kept stabbing him. She felt the warmth on her hands but ignored it. Then when the world was going dark, she suddenly could breathe again. She gasped for breath and started to cough. She rolled to her side and when she could steady herself she looked around and froze. She could see the man, their ugly wounds on his side. There was a lot of blood too, and that's when she looked at the warmth on her skin. She had his blood all over her hand and forearm. She had never thought about killing someone and she had just did it on instinct. She felt very sick at the moment and started to throw up her last meal on the ground. Kakashi had been fighting the large ninja and he had to admit the man had some power. With that huge club of his, if he connected, then Kakashi knew he would be in having a bad day. Luckily he was faster than the large man to keep himself from getting hit by him, but it wasn't easy as the man was like a juggernaut. He just kept on coming. "I'm going to enjoy this. You have any idea how much money is on your head, Kakashi?" Bear asked him, swinging his large club in a downward arc. "Also, you know of me, huh?" Kakashi said before jumping aside from the blow that left the earth damaged in its blow. "Well, sorry if I don't know who you are, but I don't have time to deal with this." He pulled up his headband to reveal his Sharingan eye as he dodged the man again. Kakashi jumped up high and started to make hand seals. As he finished he blew out a ball of fire at the ninja. Bear quickly countered by creating an earth barrier that covered him in a dome came out of the ground. He maybe have been from the Cloud Village, which was good with lightning, but he had picked up on a few earth-style moves here and there over the years. That was pathetic, he muttered to himself, getting ready to move when he heard the sounds of birds chirping. At first he thought it was Sparrow, but there were too many bird noises and he knew she couldn't do more than one at a time. That pause was just enough for Kakashi to get ready for his one original jutsu. "Chidori." Kakashi's voice was heard as the lightning blade came through the stone and sank into the large man's chest. He shouted out in surprise and pain, feeling his chest on fire from the attack. He tried to move but his body felt heavy and he felt himself fall onto the ground. Kakashi looked down at the ninja with the hole in his chest and he could see the man had stopped breathing. With that out of the way he had to make sure the others were okay. Naruto didn't know how it happened, but he was fighting some ninja with nasty scars on his face. After finishing up with the last of the bandits he saw his dad getting double-teamed. Well, he wasn't going to stand for that. So he charged ahead to attack the man with the scars on him. When he got there he started off with using his shadow clones to start things off with, as usual with him. He tried to keep ahead of the man, but the man was way too good and he was wishing he got those new justice down before this fight. When he got out of this he would make plans to learn those two before he left the village again. He could have used his exploding clones, but he was too close to his dad for that. He was grabbed by the ninja and suddenly found himself thrown into the woods while his clones kept on fighting. He would have been okay too if he hadn't had the rotten luck of being thrown into a thorn bush. Nothing hurt more than all those little thorns at a fast speed cutting into him. Thankfully they weren't deep as he pulled himself out. Ow, 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 ow. Damn it, I'm really getting pissed off with this guy. Huh. He saw some tattered cloth on his face and pulled it. That bastard. He ruined my mask. Don't worry kid, you'll not live to worry about it, Scar said, looking down at the boy. As the boy turned to face him the scared man suddenly looked at him in shock. With the mask gone he could see the strange marks on the boy's cheeks, and with the blue eyes and yellow hair he knew who the boy was. It was the same boy from years earlier, the one that had given him all those scars and ruined his career. You, of all the people, I never thought I'd get the chance to face you again, you little monster, Scar, Akira said to him, growing the words out with as much hatred as was possible. What you saying, that you know me or something? Naruto shouted out as he threw a few kunai, but the man just sidestepped them, glaring hatred at the boy. What's the matter, boy, don't you recognize your own handiwork? You're the one that gave me these scars. Naruto looked at him, frozen for a moment. He was trying to remember where he could have done something like that, but he couldn't remember anyone he had something like that. His face looked like an animal attacked it anyway. Let me refresh your memory, demon, you remember the Hyuga girl? With that, Naruto's eyes widened at the sudden memory of the night he had found Hinata being kidnapped. He could barely remember that night, but a few things stuck out, and looking at the man he thought he could see a bit of the man he met years ago, but it had been so long and he had been so young back then. I know I hurt that guy, but I did that to him. How could I do? Was it the fox? You ruined my life that night. I know what you were, or at least that you're not human. I saw the monster that you were that night. I can't believe that the village let something like you live. All because of you I failed in my mission to get that girl. Why the hell did you try and take Hinata-chan anyway? Naruto said, angrily clenching his fist. Simple, my village wanted her bloodline ability. She was to be taken to Cloud and she would have been used to breed a new Hyuga line in our village, and if I couldn't get her, then I was prepared to just take her eyes. I'm sure that she could have survived even if blinded for the rest of her life, but she most likely would have died from the pain and trauma anyway. Naruto's teeth clenched at that. He never did find out why she had been taken, but the thought of Hinata being taken and used like that filled him with rage, and the thought of someone taking her eyes like that made him even more angry. That's it, get angry, boy, I want to see that power again, Scar told him, getting himself ready. He had waited years for this, and last time he had been surprised, but this time he knew what to expect, and besides, an angry opponent made mistakes as well, so he might as well see just how far he could push the boy before he slit his throat. He quickly moved forward faster than Naruto expected. The boy tried to fight off the man, but his fighting skills weren't up to the man's level. He tried to throw punches and kicks, but only ended up with them being countered, and then he was hit hard in return. But no matter how many times Naruto was kicked down, he never gave up. He just got up and tried to go at it with more force. He created several shadow clones as he used them to try and overwhelm the man. Scar only smirked as he started to make hand seals, lightning storm. He shot out his hands as bolts of lightning shot out. They arced and raced all over the place, and his clones were hit and dispersed from the damage. The real Naruto got hit in the chest with one bolt. He felt his body stiffen as his nerves all flared up, and he yelled out in pain as he was sent into a tree. He groaned, trying to clear his head, knowing that the man would attack him again, but he had trouble feeling his body. Don't worry, it's not permanent, but you won't be able to move for a few seconds anyway, more than enough time. Pity, I expected more from a freak like you, but I guess the last time was a fluke. Akira grinned as he slowly pulled out a kunai. He wanted to enjoy this moment. He wanted the boy to suffer for everything that had happened to him since that night. And don't worry about your team, I recognized at least 2 of them. The boy with that symbol on his shirt must be the last Uchiha I heard about. I'll have to make quick work or you, boy, to make sure they don't kill him. With him I could make a deal to get back into Cloud. To have the mighty Sharingan in our possession would be something that my Kage would overlook my past actions for, plus that was Kakashi Hatake out there, wasn't it? There's many that would pay for the bounty on his head. Leave them alone, Naruto growled out, trying to get up. As for the pink one, she's nothing special, but I know of some slavers that like them young, so I can at least make some money off of her that way if she lives, that is. Naruto felt the blood rushing to his ears, pounding against them. Thinking about that, he could see his father dead on the ground, Sasuke put into some cage, and Sakura being tied up and dragged off. They were his father, his family, his team, and he wouldn't let this man destroy it. He felt the anger rise up, and with it something else. He wasn't sure what it was, a warm feeling like a fire inside of him, but he felt stronger with it. So he let it burn and grow within him. He could start to feel his body again, and he looked up enraged at the scarred man. Scar saw the boy's eyes turn into that familiar red, those red eyes that once haunted his nightmares. That's it, show me the true monster that you are. He lunged forth, trying to stab the boy, but he was a lot quicker than before and managed to move out of the way. He quickly turned to see the boy on all fours like some kind of wild animal. Let's finish this, boy, only one of us is leaving here alive this time. Scar yelled out as both fighters started to move towards each other. The others had just finished up dealing with the enemy. The bandits that could still run did, leaving their comrades behind them, but Kakashi let them go. They weren't in any shape to chase them down, and besides, without the ninja leaders and the bulk of their forces, they weren't much a threat anymore. He scanned the area and took stock of things. He saw Sakura looked a bit pale and a little shaky. When he saw the blood on her, he knew she must have just killed. He looked to see Sasuke with some blood as well, but he seemed to be handling things better, but he wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. He looked around but suddenly noticed that Naruto wasn't with them. Has anyone seen Naruto? Both genin looked at each other and then around, and Kakashi got worried. There was one ninja not accounted for. He was about to call them to start searching when they felt it, that same dark chakra that Kakashi had felt before years ago. He looked to see where it was coming from, and there was the sounds of battle going on. He was worried that maybe Naruto's seal had weakened or something, but whatever it was, Naruto was in danger. He quickly ordered his team to start off in that direction looking for Naruto. They ran into the forest looking for Naruto. Although Sakura and Sasuke were wondering where that powerful chakra from coming from, they could feel it and it felt evil to them. Then just as suddenly as it appeared, the evil chakra was gone. They broke off to search in different directions. Sakura was worried for her friend and teammate after feeling that strange chakra. Just remembering it gave her chills, and she was wondering what that missing nin had done to him and if that ninja had been the one to use that chakra. Naruto, where are you? Are you okay? She called out and began searching. She quickly found the site of a battle. The trees and bushes and even the earth was damaged. She quickly looked around and nearly missed a bit of blonde hair sticking out from behind a tree. Naruto! She yelled out, running over to him. She hoped that he was okay, but what she didn't expect was the sight she found. She froze in shock and horror at the scene. There was Naruto sitting by a tree looking at his hands. They were covered in blood as well. He had blood over his clothing too. His mask was ripped to shreds and she could see his face for the first time, but she could see the haunted look on his face. Naruto, are you okay? She gently asked him, but he didn't even react, and then she saw the body of the ninja he had been fighting. She had already thrown up her stomach contents after her own first kill, but this was much worse. The man's stomach was opened up like he had been eviscerated. There was so much blood and all sorts of things from inside the man all over the place. She turned around and quickly fell to her knees, covering her mouth as she started to dry heave. Naruto, Sakura, are you over here? Sasuke asked as he jumped onto the scene, and he too froze at the sight of Naruto's kill. He looked at the genin who looked shell-shocked, and he couldn't believe that Naruto had brutally killed a man like that. He never knew that Naruto could be like that, and from the looks of it, Naruto didn't know it either. When Kakashi got on the scene, he knew that he had to help all his genin pick up the pieces. The first kill was always the hardest, and by the looks of it, this day would live forever in them. He wished that they didn't have to experience such horror at a young age, but he himself had seen this kind of death not much older than them. He would have to deal with them carefully, and from the looks of it, his son needed him more than ever now. Chapter 29, Aftermath. After the whole mess with the battle, Kakashi had them move to a river that they had passed by on their patrol to clean up. He had them wash their clothing and themselves, knowing that getting all the blood off would help. It was strangely silent through it all, and he was wondering where he would start first. As a father, he wanted to go to Naruto, plus he seemed the worst off. Sakura was still a bit shaky from her ordeal, although Sasuke's reaction was still troubling him. The boy was either hiding his emotions or he didn't feel much about killing, and for a first kill that worried him. Although the boy was used to seeing the dead, after all, finding your entire clan and family murdered did things to you. He just hoped that the boy wouldn't go down the path some took. Some found it easier to kill off your emotions to be able to take this kind of work. At times he would agree that it helped, but only to a degree. To totally kill off your emotions led you down a very dangerous path. By nightfall they were all cleaned up, but still the mood wasn't very good. It was too quiet in the camp. Sakura herself didn't feel like eating much. Although she felt hungry, she still couldn't stomach much food in her stomach. Thinking back to what happened, she still felt shaky after that battle, but she was also worried about her team. Sasuke seemed more withdrawn than normal, but what really worried her was Naruto. In all the years she had known him, he had never been this quiet in his life. She sat next to him by the fire, neither of them saying anything. She wanted to say something, just anything to get her mind off today. She looked at his face, and for the first time she saw his real face without the mask. It wasn't too bad, he wasn't overly handsome like Sasuke but he could be considered cute. What really surprised her was the black marks on his cheeks, they matched the markings on his mask which surprised her. She looked to Kakashi and wondered if this was a family trait and the reason why they wore masks. Personally she found them kind of nice, and with that she thought she found at least something to talk about. You know you look nice without the mask on Naruto, you should wear it less now and then. Naruto just shrugged and she frowned. Naruto are you okay? She asked him and she didn't see him react at all. So she went to stare into the fire with him. She was silent for a long moment before the memories were overwhelming her again. I can still see it, you know. His blood on my hands, I know he was going to kill me but I just don't know how to deal with this. I'm 13 and just killed a man and what's worse, we're going to have to do it again and again for the rest of our lives. She pulled her knees to her chest feeling the tears running down her face slowly. I don't like killing, I know it's our job but still. I don't like it. I feel sick all the time and I feel like a monster or something. That last part was able to reach Naruto. He looked at the girl and for the first time it registered how much she was hurting over this. He had been lost in his own thoughts until the fact that she was thinking of herself as a monster got his attention. That wasn't something he thought of when he looked at one of his oldest friends, thinking she was the monster. He was the one that felt like that, after all seeing what he had done to that ninja and remembering all the names that some people in the village called him made him feel more like that. She didn't have a demon locked up inside of her trying to get out, she didn't lose control and rip that guy apart. He looked at her shaking form and he inched a bit closer and put his arm around her. She jumped surprised by him. Sakura-chan, you're not a monster, you're one of my closest of friends. Trust me, you are nothing close to being one. That guy was going to kill you and you just did it. You feel sorry for him even though he wouldn't feel sorry for you. Trust me, you're a better person than he was, he said to her gently. She cracked a small smile and lowered her head a bit. Thanks. But I still see it when I close my eyes. You always remember the first time you kill. Both teens jumped at the new voice and Naruto pulled away from Sakura and turned around quickly to face his father. Damn it, don't sneak up on people like that. He shouted at him. He was actually glad he did shout. Being his usual loud self was a good sign, although as soon as it was over he went back to being depressed. Kakashi sighed and sat down with his team. There are no magic words or anything I can say to make you feel any better. It will get easier in the future but the trick is a balance, to kill only when needed and to never enjoy the killing. If you enjoy killing it leads to a very dark path for you. You will lose what it makes you human and deep down that's what we all are. Another is to still feel something. If you cut off your emotions to deal with this kind of thing you'll be empty inside. You'll just be existing and not really living anymore and that's not a life you should live. He cast a glacé to Sasuke but the boy obviously wasn't listening to him. The man sighed shaking his head at that. Maybe he would have a talk on the way back to the village. Both Sakura and Naruto felt a bit better at that, although they still weren't sure what to think and feel at the moment. Kakashi gave them one of his ice smiles. Well, I'm going to take a leak, be right back. That caused the two genin to face fall. Once again, just when Kakashi was saying something cool he ruins it at the last moment. As both of his students picked themselves up he slipped into the forest and quickly pulled out a small piece of note paper from his vest and started to write something. He folded it up and quickly summoned up his fastest dog. He bent down and gave the dog the note and told him who to give it to and to get there as quickly as possible. The summoned animal nodded his head and ran off into the night towards the village. With that done he was about to get back to camp when he heard someone walking up behind him. Naruto came out of the darkness looking up at him. Dad, can we talk? Anytime, he said, finding a large stone to sit on and gestured for him to sit on a slightly smaller one next to him. Naruto sat there not saying anything at the moment but Kakashi was patient and would let him say what was bothering him. It took him a moment until Naruto finally spoke up. Dad. I think the fox did something to me. Kakashi was worried about this and told him to lift his shirt and channel some chakra. He checked the seal and to him it looked okay. Although he wasn't a master of seals like his sensei had been or Jiraiya even, but with his own skills he thought it looked good. He told Naruto this but it didn't seem to make him feel any less assured. Then why did I do that? I mean, I was so angry and then, I can't really remember what happened, he told him. He looked at his hands and although the blood was finally gone he didn't feel very clean. He was wondering if he was really starting to become a monster like all those people said that he was. He was scared that the fox would win out and eventually get out, or take him over and make him do horrible things. Dad, I don't like this. I mean, yeah, I knew this would happen, but was that really me? He asked. Naruto, I know you, I raised you, but let me tell you this, you are a good kid. But I felt that chakra and it was the fox's. Now I don't know everything, but I think you were drawing on its chakra by accident. Tell me, what exactly were you feeling and how did it make you feel when you were using it? Naruto thought hard about it. Angry, I was really angry. I mean, the things the guys said just made me really mad, and then I just started to feel really angry. I can't remember being that angry before, and I also felt. Go on, you felt what? Powerful, like nothing else really mattered. Like he was nothing and that I should destroy him. I wanted to hurt him and make him suffer. I felt this rush of power and it felt good. Naruto didn't like saying it, but it was honestly how he felt. He had never felt so powerful before, so free, and it scared him. He had no control and he had seen the results of what had happened as well. He was scared of losing himself to that kind of power again, and what if he hurt someone close to him? He couldn't live with the fact that he had hurt someone close to him. It was all because of that damn fox that his life was so hard. He could still vaguely remember that day he had been kidnapped and nearly killed. Then there were the kids that picked on him, the adults that gave him cold looks. There just seemed to be no end to the problems that this thing caused him. He was lost in his thoughts until he felt a strong hand on his shoulder and looked up to see his dad. Naruto, you are stronger than this thing. There is a reason why it was placed in you. Your biological father wanted you to be seen as a hero, the one that kept us all safe from the Kyuubi. It's because of you that the village still lives, and never doubt for a second that you're not that strong. I've always been proud of you, son, and as long as you never give up you'll always win against the fox. And if you ever need any help, you know that I'll be here for you too. Naruto smiled up at him. Dad, thanks. Kakashi smiled back down at him and ruffled his hair. Hey, what's a father for? 2 days later. In the Team 8 training field, Kurenai was looking over her team as they did a group training exercise. They wore a different colored bandana on their arms, and every now and then she would call out the color. That person was the enemy that they would attack, but at any moment she randomly chose someone else to be the enemy for this. Currently Kiba as the enemy, as Hinata and Shino were attacking him. Of course Akamaru was with Kiba, so it helped to even the odds. There were also some restrictions, such as Shino couldn't drain everyone's chakra totally and Hinata couldn't close everyone's chakra down either, only parts of it. She was proud of how well they were improving. They were really coming along as a team. With some more training they could even be ready for the Chunin exams at this point. That was still months away, but when it would come to the village she wanted her team to be ready for it. What the Genins didn't know was that the Jonin senseis had a slight bet going on how many of them could get their teams ready for the next exams. Kurenai was brought out of her thoughts as she heard something running towards them. She looked to find a dog running at them at full speed, it seemed. Although as soon as the dog saw her it quickly changed course to go directly towards her. She was wondering if this was something from Kiba's clan. After all, it wasn't the first time one of their dogs came with a message for Kiba. The dog stopped panting hard as it dropped something at her feet. She bent down to pick up a note that was addressed to her. As soon as the dog saw that she got it, he decided that he no longer needed to stick around and went back to the summoning world. Kurenai raised an eyebrow at that. She hadn't known that it was a summons, and as far as she knew only one man could summon dogs. She opened the letter and sure enough it was from Kakashi. She read on, and although she had known it wouldn't be good news, she didn't like what she was reading. It was lucky that her own team hadn't gone through the first kill. That was something she wasn't looking forward with dealing. The request was mainly if she could have Hinata go with Naruto. Apparently he thought that she could help him through this in a way he couldn't. He also asked if she could get in touch with Asuma and get Ino talking with Sakura as well. That was pretty much it, other than to pass on what happened to the Hokage and that they were on their return journey and would be back in a few days. She hoped that his team would be alright, and she could already see her students looking at her wondering what was going on. I didn't say to stop. Green is the enemy, go. She commanded and they jumped back into action. She would have to have a word with Hinata after training, but she was also wondering just how much she should tell her. She knew of the girl's feelings for him, anyone with eyes could see that. Well, most she was wondering why Naruto was so oblivious to it. At any rate, she would just tell her that Naruto had a rough mission and could use someone to talk to. She would have to track down Asuma, but that wasn't too hard, he usually hung out in certain areas. She had to smile a little at an excuse to see him. Although the only person that knew that she liked the man was Anko, she wasn't sure how to act. She had spent so many years on her career as a ninja that she hardly had the time for dates. Sure, there had been the odd one here and there, but nothing meaningful. Asuma, however, wasn't like most guys. He was caring and didn't look at her as some kind of sex object. Plus, she will admit he had been kind of a rebel and bad boy back in the day with how he left to join the 12 Guardians against his father's wishes. She had a crush back on him during that period, and when he left she felt a bit empty, but she moved on. Or at least she thought she had, until he came back, and he was more mature now, but he still had that devil-may-care attitude, and to her he was sexy too. It only she could get him to give up smoking, but it seemed to be a family addiction. At any rate, she put the note away and went back to watching her student train. After they were done, she would give them the rest of the day off after pulling aside Hinata for a talk. A few days later, Team 7 had finally made it back home. It had been a rough few days for the team. Sakura and Naruto hadn't slept well for the first night. It got better each day, but still it was something Kakashi knew they would have to live with. Sasuke was still being distant, and it was hard to see just what was going through the boy's mind. He internally sighed, hoping that Kurenai got his message. That way at least 2 members of his team would have some support. But Sasuke was another problem. The boy just didn't have any friends, as he had pushed everyone away. Kakashi knew why. It was to prevent anyone forming bonds with him, so when those bonds were cut they couldn't hurt him again. He had been like that after his father's death, but still his old team reached out to him. He kept trying to reach the boy, but it was hard. The boy was really stubborn, even more so than he had been. He guessed it was that Uchiha pride of his that kept asking people for help for anything. He needed to think of a way to break the boy out of that line of thought. Naruto had managed to find one of his spare masks that he brought with him and put it back on after that first night. Sakura kept trying to tell him that he didn't need it, but he was vocal about why it was tradition. It was good to see them getting back to normal at least. When they got to the main gates, he could already feel the team's mood lighten as they knew they were finally home. Well, I'm going to make a full report on things. You all go home and take tomorrow off. You all did great work and just relax. We'll pick up things later at the training field at the usual time in 2 days. With that, Kakashi vanished in a poof of smoke. Sasuke shrugged and walked back to his home, leaving the other 2 behind. Naruto and Sakura said their goodbyes and went on their separate ways home. Naruto dropped his stuff at his house, but he just didn't want to sit around. He still have a lot to think about, so he decided to go to the place where he did all his deep thinking. For times like this he went to one of his favorite places, the top of the fort's head on the mountain. At first he never knew why he felt drawn to the fort, but after Kakashi told him about his past, it made for a lot of sense. His biological father had been a great man and had sacrificed himself to save the village. He had been a great hero and someone that he wanted to not only become but be even greater than. Although at the moment he didn't feel much like a hero, when you read about those great battles they never mentioned just how nasty things got. There was so much they never told you about how real combat is like. It's nothing like in the books, which made it seem so clean. But it wasn't clean, it's the opposite, and he was left wondering if the fourth felt like he was at this moment. While he was sitting there thinking, he hadn't noticed a small girl his own age had just managed to get up to the mountain top. Hinata had been looking for Naruto all over the village. She had missed him at the gate, so she went on a search of all his usual places. After Kurenai told her that something happened and that she should go talk with Naruto, she had been waiting for the day for him to get back. So she had started looking for him at the places and people that would know where he might be. First she checked with Konohamaru, but he hadn't seen him at all, so she checked the ramen stand and he wasn't there either. This was starting to worry her. If something was bothering him, he tried to eat them away. If they were really bad, he went to train to blow off steam. So she checked the training area that he used, but still no sign. Now she was really getting worried. Only when things got really bad for him did he go to the one place where most people didn't know about. She knew about it from him taking her there once as kids, telling her it was a secret spot that he liked to go to. So she looked up at the Hokage monument and with her eyes she was able to see a small form sitting on top of it. She went quickly as she could up the mountain path and she was finally able to see him now. But she stopped when she looked at him, he looked so defeated. His eyes looked unfocused and lost and in so much pain. She couldn't remember ever seeing Naruto like this, it just seemed wrong for him to be like this, like it was totally against nature for him to be this way. Just looking at him like this filled her heart with pain at how much he looked to be silently suffering. She felt tears in her eyes at just the sight of him and so without thinking she just acted. Naruto was silently staring out across the village until he felt a pair of slim arms hug him from behind. He felt the weight of Hinata against his back and she seemed to be shaking. It wasn't until he felt the water on his cheek that he realized that she was crying. He didn't like to see her cry, she was the best person he knew and seeing her cry was just heartbreaking. Hinata-chan. Naruto-kun, why won't you let me help? You always are there for me, you were there for me when my mother died when I was in pain. Please Naruto-kun, let me help you for once. She begged him, hugging him hard. He had been her source of inspiration and happiness for as long as she could remember. He was always a source of happiness for not only her but others around her. He was like sunshine and she loved how his blue eyes held what seemed like an eternal warmth, happiness with a hint of mischief in them. But now his eyes held nothing but sorrow and pain and she didn't like to see that kind of look in them. She hated seeing him in pain and she wanted to comfort him for once and take away his pain and suffering like he did with her. Naruto felt the warmth of her body and strangely it felt nice. He closed his eyes just embracing the feeling that was washing over him. He just felt better in her arms for some reason, he felt warmer and he didn't want it to end. He hadn't felt this way since he was a kid and he had been scared and then his dad would always be there to make him feel safe again. Naruto didn't know what to say but he also didn't like to see her cry. He twisted around and hugged her back, giving back what he was getting. Hinata seemed to hug him even closer as she felt his arms around her. It seemed natural the way they were holding each other like this. Normally such contact would send her blushing bright red and most likely faint, but she couldn't do that now. Naruto needed her and she would be there for him. Tell me what happened, she asked him. Naruto told her everything that he could. He skipped the part about the Kyuubi for now, he didn't want to burden her with that information. So he went into the battle and how he had been forced to kill that man. He also told her that it had been the same one that tried to kidnap her years ago. She was shocked to learn this. She still thought about that night now and then, but now that man was dead. It just seemed that man did nothing but hurt her and Naruto. After he was done she spoke to him, Naruto-kun, you did nothing wrong. Why you're a good person, why you've always been one of the kindness people I've known. The fact that you feel bad proves that why you're a good person because he wouldn't have. I know you, and I know that deep down, you are good and no matter what anyone says you are. Naruto smiled as his head was resting on her shoulder listening to her. He felt bad as he still kept secrets from her like his real parents and the demon locked up inside of him. He hated himself that she trusted him so much and yet he was afraid to tell her the truth. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think, Hinata, but you are one of my most precious people. You really do believe in me it seems, so I don't want to let you down. Hinata-chan, thank you. He whispered into her ear. She smiled, blushing a bit now, feeling his breath touch her eat like that. She was glad that she could help him out. Unfortunately that was also the point when she realized that she was in fact holding Naruto right up against her. He was pressing his body against hers and she could feel the hot breath coming off him against her neck. She had just acted without really thinking, but now that her brain had finally caught up to what was going on. Eep. Naruto heard the sound and blinked a few times as Hinata suddenly went slack. He gently pulled her away and noticed how loose she was. He saw her face was still bright red but with a happy, dazed expression on it. Hinata. Hinata, wake up. Oh man, why does this keep happening? Naruto yelled out frantically, trying to wake the poor girl up. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, Sakura was just sitting by the bridge that her team passed to get to their training field. She liked the place, it was beautiful and peaceful place. Though was leaning against one of the railings of the red little bridge just watching the gentle water or the small river move under her. She just listened to the gentle sounds as the warmth of the sun hit her body. She needed something to calm her after that mission. She just closed her eyes and took in everything that she could. She could feel the gentle wind move across her skin and face, the heat of the sun's rays. She could smell the scene of flowers on the river bank and the sounds of animals in the trees not too far away. She let her mind just clear and to find some kind of inner peace with herself. "Hey Sakura!" yelled a familiar voice. Sakura was so shocked she nearly fell over, so much for inner peace with her around. Damn it, things were going so good too. Ino Pig better have a good excuse or else, Shanaru. An angry inner Sakura said in her mind, rising a fist in Ino's direction. Sakura turned to her best friend. "Hey Ino, what's up?" Ino walked over to the pink-haired girl. She had been told something had happened during the mission she had been on. She wasn't sure what since Asuma just told her that she should at least go and see if she was okay. Looking at her now, she could see that Sakura looked a little worse for wear. Her hair was a little unkempt and there was signs of dark circles starting to show up under her eyes. She looked tired and Ino had to wonder what had happened. "Hey there forehead, can't a girl hang with her friend?" Ino said, smiling brightly at her. Sakura sighed and turned to face the river. "Sorry, but I'm not up to it, I just want to be alone." Ino didn't listen though, as she just leaned against the railing next to her. Sakura didn't say anything, so Ino just started going on about her day. Work at the flower shop, training with her team, the D-rank missions she had been on and hated. How she had to keep motivating Shikamaru to get off his lazy ass and do some work now and then. Sakura tried to ignore her, but Ino just kept on going, making a vain start to show up on the pink-haired girl's head. "Ino." "Yes," she said innocently. "What will it take for you to go away?" Ino smirked, knowing full well that she would break sooner or later. "Easy. Tell what happened." Sakura bit her lip, not wanting to say anything, but Ino started up again, so she had to stop her and then tell her everything. It was hard to go through what happened, how she felt when she had killed that bandit. She looked down at her hands by the end of it and noticed that her hands were shaking. She looked at them, at the hands that bled on them only a few days ago. She could still remember how it felt, and she felt slightly sick to her stomach at that moment. But just when she thought she was going to lose it, she watched a pair of slender hands take hers and the shaking slowly started to stop. She slowly looked up the arms to the face of Ino and she would see the worry in them. Ino had never seen Sakura this shaken up before. "Hey, it's okay." "I'm not so sure it is," Sakura said quietly, looking down. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." "Hey, that's not the Sakura I know," Ino told her. "I remember when you used to be the shy girl that had trouble even speaking. You haven't been like that in years. You're a stronger person than you used to be, and I know for a fact that you won't let yourself become weak. You're one of the strongest people I know and you're going to beat this. We came too far to be stopped and we're just starting out our lives as ninjas. I know this isn't easy, but you don't have to do this alone. You got me and all your friends to lean on. So if you ever need to talk, you can at least come to me. Now how about we just go out and enjoy the fact you're back and safe? Are you doing anything tomorrow?" "No, we got the day off," the pink-haired girl said. "Good, there's this cute little dress I think you'd like for sale, and then we can go get something to eat and just hang out. We can make it a girls' day out, what do you say?" Sakura had to manage a small smile. "Ino, thanks." Ino smiled. "No problem, just promise me something." "Okay, what?" Ino's face got a bit more serious. "When this happens, Sami, be there for me too, will you?" Sakura nodded her head. Of course, it's what best friends are for, right? Chapter 30, Day Off. It was a normal morning for Konoha, and in Naruto's room he was slowly waking up. He groaned as he felt himself waking up. He pried it open an eye and looked at the clock on by his bed. It was 9 in the morning and he was surprised at how long he had slept in. He remembered that he was going to see Hinata today. As he got up and started to stretch out, he remembered her at the monument and him taking her home again. He was a bit embarrassed carrying the Hyuga heiress on his back, but he was glad to do it. Thankfully she woke up before he reached the main gates and they made plans to meet up today since she seemed to have gotten the day off as well. He felt a bit better than he had the past few days. He was still slightly scared of what could happen if he called on that fox's chakra again, but he would deal with that later. He did his usual morning rituals before getting dressed. He checked the time and he didn't feel like making breakfast, so he'd stop by the ramen stand before going to Hinata's. "Yo, Naruto, how are you feeling?" Naruto looked to see his dad on the couch reading one of his books again. "Hey dad, feeling a bit better to be honest." Kakashi nodded, glad to hear it. So what's up for today? I'm going to see Hinata-chan today and we're going to hang out. We haven't been able to do like we used to when we were in the academy. Naruto told him. Alright, oh by the way, I'll be cashing in the payments for the missions and handing them out to the team. I'll place it on your dresser when I get it. You should also know that the mission was bumped up to AB rank because of the ninjas we faced. Kakashi told his son. Naruto nodded his head and they said their goodbyes as he left to get to Hinata's home. It was kind of cool that the mission was now officially AB rank. Normally he'd be excited about that, but he didn't feel too excited about that mission. He was still thinking about what happened, and what he was really worried about was the damn fox inside of him. If this is what happened every time he got really angry, then it would mean he would have to control his anger. Which he admits is hard for him since he lashes out far too often, but he couldn't help it, that was just the way he was. At any rate, he just wanted to put his problems behind him for the moment and just enjoy the day with Hinata. He quickly stopped off at the ramen stand for a few bowls and had a nice chat with Ayame and her father there. It was one of the reasons he loved that stand. It had both great food with great people to talk to while there. After that he made his way to the Hyuga clan compound. Naruto went in through the front without a problem as he was well known among the Hyuga clan and went in search of Hinata. He was wondering if he would be able to see Neji there if he wasn't with his team today. He wanted to ask him if Lee was up for a rematch at some point. He didn't see him as he walked through the grounds, so he guessed he could always have Hinata tell him later. He found her in the garden area with Hanabi as they were sitting and talking. He yelled out to them and Hanabi smiled at seeing him. Hinata blushed as usual, giving him a weak wave as he walked over to them. So how are my favorite Hyuga girls? Naruto asked happily. We're the only Hyuga girls you know personally, Naruto-Nisan, Hanabi stated. Ah, why did you have to be so cold, Hanabi-chan? Naruto said in an exaggerated display of being hurt. Hinata giggled at this theatrics, hiding her smile behind her hands. See, Hinata can at least knows when to have fun, he said. I know how to have fun, Hanabi said, crossing her arms and giving him a hard look. Besides, when my sister told me you two had a free day, I was hoping you'd want to join me and Konohamaru today. Naruto thought about it. He hadn't seen the old man's grandson since he left on his mission. The boy was kind of like a little brother to him and he wouldn't mind seeing him again. He then got a sly smile on his face as an idea popped into his head. Oh, so we're off to see Konohamaru then. Didn't know you liked boys yet, man, you're after a boyfriend already, you really work fast, Hanabi-chan. Hanabi looked both mortified and embarrassed. I'm only 8 years old. I don't like boys like that, he's just my only friend outside of the clan. Naruto burst out laughing at the look on her face, it had been priceless. Naruto-kun, that was mean to Hanabi-chan. Hinata scolded him for being mean to her little sister. Okay, I'm sorry. Hanabi gave him a small glare, telling him that she would get even with him at some point, but that would have to be later. One of the reasons she wanted them to come was so that her and Konohamaru could work on Hinata and Naruto while they were all together. After that, the small group decided they would go and meet Konohamaru at the park since he would be getting there pretty soon. It took them a while to get to the park, but when they got there they found Konohamaru waiting there for them. He was happy to see Naruto and the Hyuga sisters as well. Hanabi and Konohamaru started to play on the equipment a bit while Naruto and Hinata had a nice talk. Mainly just to catch up with what they had been doing since the last time they really got to see another. He was glad to hear that Hinata was doing fine with her team and she really liked her sensei. Naruto had met Kurenai a few times thanks to his dad and the fact she was Anko's best friend too. Oh yeah, she always seemed really nice, Naruto nodded his head. Hinata smiled and nodded too. Why yes, she's been great. She's so kind, gentle, but also gets serious when she has to be. Sometimes what? She kind of reminds me, of my mom, Hinata said. Hinata fell silent at that, remembering the death of her mother always hurt. She felt a hand on her shoulder and looked to see Naruto there. He had his hand on her shoulder, giving it a little squeeze and a comforting look to tell her she wasn't alone. She was glad for it and gave him a small smile to let him know that she was okay. Hey, aren't you two going to play too or make eyes at each other all day? Konohamaru yelled out, making both young teens blush and pull apart. It's nothing like that, we were just talking. Naruto shouted out, glad the mask hid a blush. We shouldn't ignore them, Naruto-kun. Why don't we join them? Hinata said, trying to get their minds off that. Yeah, you're right, that's why we came here, right? He asked, smiling at her with his eyes closed like normal. They started to play together. Normally they either played all together or they would be split into two teams. Usually they were the girls against the boys or two older kids against the two youngest. But Naruto didn't care at all. For the moment he was just a young teen enjoying his life with his friends, and that's all that mattered to him. After that mission, this was the best kind of thing he could do, something that reminded him that there was still plenty of good things in the world. They played several games together, laughing and enjoying things. The group also showed Konohamaru a few games as well. One of them was Captured Princess. Mainly one person acted as the princess that you had to save. For this game Hinata got that, while Hanabi and Konohamaru had to tag Naruto in order to defeat him. The two kids tried their best, but Naruto was great at moving to avoid people when he had to. So he managed to avoid the two kids as best he could and quickly made over to where Hinata was by a tree. Got ya, Naruto said as he took Hinata by the hand, as that signaled that she was now safe. He had to admit it felt kind of good to play this old game again. It reminded him of when they were younger and things had been simpler. Konohamaru walked up as he was grinning under his scarf covering his lower face. He had an idea and he hoped that Hanabi would catch on to what he had planned to help get Naruto and Hinata together. Hey, isn't the hero supposed to get a kiss from the girl when he saves her? Both young teens blushed at this, Hinata more so of course. I can't do that. Naruto blurted out. Hinata's face looked to the ground, feeling depressed that he quickly said such a thing with her right there. Hanabi did in fact catch on and schooled her face to not let it show. What, are you saying my sister isn't pretty enough to kiss? No, I mean she is one of the prettiest girls from the academy, Naruto said, suddenly realizing that Hinata might have taken it as an insult. He only meant it, as she was his best friend, and he thought that she would be too weirded out by that. He had seen her face fall and remembered the few tips his dad gave him about girls and their moods. Girls like to be complimented and he had done the exact opposite. Hinata's head shot up in surprise that he called her pretty. She hadn't thought that he would say such a thing about her, as she thought she was just kind of plain. Naruto thinks I'm pretty. But why would he think that? Ino has better hair and Sakura is so sure of herself. But he thinks I'm one of the prettiest girls from school. Her face grew warm at the thought of Naruto looking at her as a beautiful girl. Konohamaru meanwhile was glad that Hanabi was catching on fast, and now it was time to really put Naruto on the spot. Well, if you think she's pretty then give her a kiss then, unless that rumor about you and the Uchiha guy was true, he said offhanded. He grinned seeing Naruto's expression. He had learned about that kiss incident from Hanabi one day and he laughed his ass off at it. Apparently Hinata had come home looking all depressed, and since Hanabi and her were close she had told her little sister what happened. Naruto was both embarrassed and pissed. Would that damn thing haunt him for the rest of his life? It had been an accident and now Konohamaru was calling him out on his sexuality. He wouldn't stand for that. He liked girls. Hell, he read his dad's books when he could, and he noticed girls all the time. It's not true, Naruto-ni-san. Hanabi said innocently, further making Naruto angry. If it is, then I think I know of a third removed cousin and I think he would think you are pretty cute if you like boys that much. I'm not gay. I like girls. Naruto shouted out, not caring how that sounded to anyone listening. Prove it then, both young kids said to him. Fine, I will. And without even thinking he turned and gave Hinata a kiss on the cheek. Sure, his mask was one and it was more of a chase kiss, but the effect on Hinata was immediate. She turned whole new shades of red as her eyes widened to the size of saucers. She was frozen stiff as her mind was trying to process what just happened, but only one thought was repeating in her brain. Naruto kissed me, Naruto kissed me, Naruto kissed me, Naruto kissed me. Hinata's mind was screaming out in joy. Sure, it wasn't some deeply romantic moonlight kiss on the lips like she had dreamed of many times. But still his lips had touched her face and it was the best she ever thought that she could have hoped for in real life. No, not again, Naruto said, seeing Hinata get all red in the face. She looked really dazed and she was starting to rock back and forth until she fell. Thankfully he was there to catch her, but he really wished he knew why she kept fainting. Every time he asked she just stuttered so much he couldn't understand. He was thinking of taking her to the hospital to see if they could find out what was wrong with her, but every time he brought it up she kept telling him it was nothing to worry about. So he just signed and gently placed her on the ground, wondering why she had such a huge smile on her face. Konohamaru and Hanabi gave each other amused looks. Well, so far that was a good first step, but is she going to be okay? He whispered to her. Hanabi nodded. Yeah, this is normal for her. Now we just have to get them to spend more time with each other, but she needs to be more confident if she's ever going to tell him how she feels. Yeah, and he doesn't know that she likes him. Why doesn't anyone just tell him? He asked. She shrugged, saying that Hinata had asked many people not to tell him because she was too embarrassed and wanted to do it herself. Although like she had already said she was too shy to do so. Konohamaru made a sour face. Were all relationships like this? Hanabi shrugged, not sure herself. She hoped not. If she ever liked a boy, she planned to just tell him to his face and deal with the after effects. Maybe we can work on them separately. I could try and get him to notice her if you think you can get her to actually say what she feels, he suggested. Good plan. She nodded her head as she looked at her sister. At this rate she was going to have to start carrying smelling salts on her from now on. Uchiha compound. Sasuke was in the training yard of his compound that he used since he was a kid. He could have moved out of the house at any time, after all it was filled with the ghosts of the past. But he needed to be reminded of what his brother had done to his clan, to their family. After the compound had been cleaned up by order of the Hokage, Sasuke had taken up residence in his old room again. It was hard to sleep that whole first month. He kept expecting his brother to come back and finish the job, but he never did come back. Eventually he got used to the quiet of the place and it became a refuge for him. He was sick and tired of all the praises he got in the academy, where all those stupid fangirls that just wanted him because of his statues as the last of a noble clan. They had this noble idea of him as some wounded soul that needed to be healed or something foolish like that. Of course he was in pain, but he needed that pain to help him push himself. He could care less about what people thought of him, it was mostly just empty praise anyway. He didn't see why just because he was the last of his clan that he should get so much attention, when he just wanted to be left alone. So he came home most of the time to just get away from it all. No one really cared anyway, most just wanted to be close to the Uchiha like they actually wanted to know him. That was a truth he learned at a very young age, that no one really wanted to know the real him. So he pushed all that fake admiration, attention and all that other stuff away. He didn't need illusions like that in his life, so he was spending his day training. He was by the lake trying out the new fire techniques that Kakashi gave him. Although he had a natural affinity with fire, it was still taking time to learn them. He wanted to totally focus on this because he knew that Naruto wouldn't be too far behind. He actually had to smirk at that thought. He had been the only one that managed to push him further along in life. Sure, he thought of Naruto as a loudmouth fool that sometimes didn't take things as seriously, but at times he had his moments. He was still surprised at how Naruto had dealt with that ninja on the mission. He never pictured the blonde would be able to do something like that. Plus there was that huge chakra signature as well. There were so many mysteries surrounding the Hitaki family. Why they wore the masks, the strange way Naruto seemed to have such a huge chakra supply, and the way he healed. Sakura hadn't noticed, but he had noticed on the way back that Naruto seemed to heal from his injuries pretty quick. There was also Kakashi's eye. He was finally able to get their sensei to explain why he had a Sharingan eye. Only the man simply said that his teammate who was dying gave it to him because he had lost one of his. To Sasuke it seemed inconceivable that an Uchiha would give up even one eye to a non-clan member. It was pretty much unheard of when he looked up information in his family history. He had seen a name crossed out that existed several decades ago in all the history. It seemed that whoever that Uchiha was, his clan had wiped out his history as though the man never existed. It seemed a harsh thing to do, even if it went against the clan's rules to wipe out someone's existence like that was a cruel fate. At any rate, Sasuke went back to his practicing, trying to get the new move down. He made the hand seals and focused on the chakra in his lungs and shouted out, "Fire style, dragon missile." With that, a flaming dragon came out of his mouth and flew over the lake. It made it about 15 feet before it lost too much chakra and faded away. He stood there panting for breath, feeling his mouth dry from the effort. Not bad, a little more practice and you'll start to get the hang of it. Sasuke quickly turned around to see Kakashi there standing behind him. His body was in a lazy position although his face looked interested in him. Although you really should have a bottle or water or something when training with that kind of fire jutsu to prevent dehydration, also be careful of your chakra level. If you use too much you'll just collapse right there and it could take a very long time for someone to find you here. He said, digging out a small purse. He handed it to him and told him about the change in mission and pay. He had already stopped by the Haruno house and given it to Sakura's parents. They were nice enough people and it seemed his other genin was out with Ino. He was glad that Asuma gave the young girl time off to help out Sakura. Sasuke placed the small pouch on the ground and nodded as he went back to the end of the dock. Kakashi knew that the boy wouldn't open up unless you force the issue. He was never good at subtly with this kind of thing anyway. Sasuke, I wanted to know how you're dealing with the last mission. The first kill isn't always something a person can handle well at first. I'm fine. That's what has me worried, Kakashi said seriously. You act like it doesn't affect you at all and that's very worrying. She was an enemy and was trying to kill me, he said simply. I only did what I did to survive. Kakashi sighed, that's true but I think you're on a fine line here. Enjoying killing makes you into someone that attacks anyone just for the thrill of it. Those types of enemies are like rabid dogs who are a danger to everyone. But with being so emotionless about it, you can actually be even more dangerous. Those types are cold and methodical, they rarely make mistakes and are very patient. How is that more dangerous? Kakashi decided to hit home with the boy. He knew it was low but he needed a wake-up call, because that's how Itachi is. Sasuke turned around furious at him for bringing up his brother and what was worse he insinuating that he was anything like his brother was taking things too far. I'm nothing like him. Both child prodigies, both want to become stronger and you both don't seem to care much about killing. You're starting to sound a lot like him but don't get angry at me if you can't help but face the truth. I know you want to kill him and I can't blame you. I know what it's like to have those close to you taken from you. I've lost nearly everyone that I care for with the exception of a handful of people. Kakashi looked over the water as Sasuke mulled over his words. Sasuke, you're on a dangerous path, you have such great potential but I'm worried where your drive will take you. You could very well end up becoming what you hate, and even if you do kill him then what? If all you have in your life is hate then you'll be left with nothing when it's over. Your entire life's work will have ended before you actually started to live your life. Sasuke looked away as he looked over the water as well. He vowed to kill Itachi for what he did, nothing could stop that. But why was this man trying so hard to make sure he didn't end up like him? Why would he care what happens to him? Why do you care? Sasuke said bluntly. Kakashi shrugged, maybe it's because you remind me of how I used to be at your age and I don't want you to make the same mistakes I made. Sasuke was now surprised. The fact that Kakashi claimed to be anything like him at his age was laughable. Hey, it's true. I used to be a strictly by the book ninja, never late and always serious. I was called a genius too but I never cared about that, only my skills. He said smiling at the boy. But then one day I lost someone who I found that I viewed as not only my best friend but as a brother I never had. When I lost him everything started to change. Sasuke thought about who it was the Uchiha that gave you the eye, wasn't it? Kakashi nodded his head. I can't find any record of his name in my family records. It was like they wanted to erase his memory. He then noticed a slightly angry look in the man's eye. He had never really seen the man angry but his whole body subtly changed and for a second he felt all the stories he looked into about him were all very true. He deserves to be remembered, Kakashi said in a tone that you could hear a suppressed fury in them. His name was Obito Uchiha and although he wasn't the normal type of Uchiha he was someone special, someone that comes around only once in a generation. I feel. People like him are very rare but I'm glad that I met him. How did it happen? Sasuke asked, wanting to know more about this mysterious Uchiha. Kakashi sighed as he looked slightly depressed as he started to recall old memories. It was on a mission. Our teammate Rin was captured and I wanted to go on and finish the mission without her. He told me he was going back. He was the one that came up with the phrase, a ninja who doesn't follow the rules is trash but a ninja that turns his backs on his friends is worse than trash. I still went on but I later turned around feeling his words echo in my mind. When I caught up there were a lot of things going on. I won't go into detail. There was a battle, we got Rin, I lost my eye and then that fool had to go and be noble and sacrifice himself so we could live. Half his body was crushed and I was there when he died. With his dying breath he asked Rin to put his eye in me. Kakashi was silent for a long time remembering his old team. I lost him. Then a few months later I lost Rin when she was on a mission and she never came back. Then I lost my sensei who was like a second father to me. For a moment I had lost everyone in my life and I had no one left, but then one bright moment came and that was Naruto. For the longest time he's kept me strong and that's where true strength comes from, Sasuke. It comes from the bonds you form. You're stronger because you fight for someone else and not just for yourself. Like how you want to avenge your clan, but are you doing it for them or for yourself? You'll be stronger if you fight in their memory and not for your revenge. Kakashi and Sasuke stood there alone silently as they watched the sun started to lower itself. He felt that he had said enough and went to turn to get back home to Naruto. Kakashi-sensei, Sasuke said to him, not looking away from the lake. Can you tell me more about this Obito sometime? Why is that? Kakashi asked. Because he was of my clan and if I am to fight in their memory, then I should remember him too. Sasuke said. For a moment Kakashi felt his heart swell at that. He always went to the memorial stone so that Obito's memory would never be forgotten as long as he lived. But now for the first time in a long time a member of his clan would know of him and remember him as well. What had been done to him was an injustice and this was a small way to ensure that Obito's memory lived on back in the clan. Sure thing, I have lots of stories about the most unique Uchiha that most likely ever lived. Kakashi smiled before vanishing in a puff of smoke.